You are listening to Seniors Junction podcast. We are eliminating seniors isolation, one conversation at a time. Your host today, Dr. Namrata Bagaria, and myself, Dr. Paul Merkley, co-founders of Seniors Junction. Our special guest today, Dr. Neil Chadha, and he is the founder of Lanark Lifestyles. Welcome, Neil.
Thank you.
Tell us about yourself, if you would, and your experience in this industry.
Sure. So my background is I trained in family medicine. I went to medical school in Calgary, came back to Ottawa. That's where my family is. That's where I was born. And I really gravitated towards care of the elderly throughout my medical training. I also remember the first day I stepped into a retirement home, actually as a first-year medical student, because my preceptor worked in one. And so yeah, I trained in family medicine, did some extra training in care of the elderly, and really catered my practice towards seniors, both in the hospitals as well as in retirement homes, as well as my community practice. And then as I worked in all of these different retirement homes, I realized that I thought there was a need to, improve some of the standards of service and care offered to seniors at these homes. Many of the buildings were quite old and dilapidated. And so I also had a bit of a background in business and real estate. So I thought, what better way to marry all three of my passions and build a retirement home, which is kind of what led me to my journey of starting Lanark Lifestyles.
What an interesting background here. Real estate, medicine, elderly care. It's very interesting. And one of the things that we've observed while doing our market research and also while interviewing a lot of guests on the podcast is isolation tends to come out as one of the top pain points, just like a pulse diagnosis, like that you just see it and that's happening in the community or in the retirement homes. And I wanted to understand that you have uh, dual experience as a physician and also as a co-founder of a company in in the business of retirement living. So what has been your experience? What are the pain points with isolation? What do you see?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, especially with COVID. I think it's only amplified isolation, but even before that, there was a big concern for seniors being isolated. To me, that's one of the appeals of retirement living is that, you are in a community and you do have other seniors there that aren't, so you don't feel socially isolated. But basically, we know that isolation is directly impacts mental health. And we know that isolated seniors have higher rates of, mental health disorders and even suicide. So it's really serious stuff. And we need to do whatever we can to combat and reduce seniors feeling isolated. Obviously, like I said, with COVID, it made things even worse. And I think we've really had to be more creative and innovative on how to try and combat isolation during a global pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if you could tell us something more, like in terms of a story or something that you saw, like a case or something that you think is more relatable for the listeners who are trying to make sense of this isolation and break it down for them.
Yeah, sure. I just saw one of my patients, on Friday, who moved into the retirement home, and she was living at home before. But she's really, unfortunately, she's suffering from a major depressive episode. And it's because she can't see her family and she can't see her grandkids. And Mother's Day was coming up, and she's literally isolated to her suite. Now she can come out, obviously, and meet with other seniors, but there are so many restrictions, stay-at-home orders, and don't go out, and so it's really made it tough. So in cases like this, where it is that serious and impacting their mental health, the government has allowed for essential caregiver status, which is what we were able to facilitate for her daughter. And we're also facilitating some virtual meeting sessions. We have an iPad that the residents can book appointments to see their loved ones with. But yeah, it's really, really challenging right now.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing this story. In fact, talking of Mother's Day, we just had our little virtual event within our clientele where we shared stories. So we gave it a spin that instead of wishing the person Happy Mother's Day, we asked them what to tell us about your mothers. So many of their mothers were born from 1910 to 1930 time range, and tell us a story or a poetry, and it was so amazing to hear like how so many people came from different parts of the world to Canada, and now they're in their 70s or their 80s, and just having that place to share, like you said, right, virtually everybody was like, as of now, I think most of our clients are in their own homes. We don't have tie-ups with the businesses in retirement living yet. But it was so interesting that you brought this up, because one side we also had like some younger people who came, and not everybody has a healthy relationship with their mothers. Sometimes it's strained for different reasons. And when such days come, sometimes the trigger is the reverse trigger, not because it's Happy Mother's Day, because it's it's something that triggers you to a great extent. So I think at least from our company, like what you're saying is the other side, like very extreme clinical medicine, which needs medical, psychiatrics, psychological interventions. But from our side, we're trying to build a community and offer interesting programs, like where people actually wrote their own poetry, so creative writing, sharing, which is non-clinical but community-based intervention. So I think thank you for sharing that story. And Paul, this is encouraging for us, right? So continue doing what we are doing.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So, is there more to your vision for addressing the problem?
I think we need to get help from the government, which we hopefully will. We've seen some new directives coming down the pipeline, which if certain percentage of home residents and staff are vaccinated, I believe they will start to loosen up the restrictions. Obviously, with summer coming up, outdoor activities always seem to help. We did a lot of that last year, and we'll continue to do that this year. We have putting green tournaments and outdoor concerts, for example. And the vaccine's also good news around the corner, getting a certain number of the population vaccinated, especially the seniors. So these are all good things that are part of the vision to help, reduce the isolation for seniors. But a lot, unfortunately, of the damage has been done, and it's really just trying to now mitigate some of that.
It's interesting. It's interesting you mentioned this. Given that the vision around what you said is more around vaccination, which is not even isolation piece, it's an infectious disease community management piece. And then certain kind of outdoor activities with social distance practice. I guess it's in a modified way that's possible. What do you think would be the challenges? And then still after that, what would be the motivations to address these particular solutions?
Challenges with orchestrating some of those ideas I had, or
Yes, and in general, solving seniors isolation post a pandemic, where the damage, like you said, is already done. It's such a big problem now. First it was X, and now it's, I don't know, many times X, and X. I don't know.
And for the future, because even though, as you've said, the pandemic will have some sort of ending or diminution, but that doesn't mean the problem will go away.
for sure, these are difficult questions, and I appreciate we having a discussion on this, because there'll be lots of discussions that need to continuously be held and reevaluated, because this isn't a never-ending problem. Or sorry, this is a never-ending problem, and unfortunately, it's only gotten worse over the last year. I think just checking in on our seniors, one way or another. It has to be more methodical and more consistent, because We seem to unfortunately forget about our seniors in society, and that's not the right way to approach our seniors because they've done so much for us, as Namrata was alluding to. Canada is just a beautiful, amazing country to live in, and it's really thanks to our seniors that we are able to really take everything that Canada has to offer, and we can't take that for granted. We need to pay it forward as well as pay it backwards to our seniors. So regular check-ins, like organizations like yourselves and government buy-in to really making sure that there's programs in place, and seniors aren't the type to really advocate for themselves because that's just not how they are, and we have to do it for them.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. And what do you think would be the motivations for organizations like yourselves, and apart from paying it forward or apart from sort of a societal duty, what are the organizational motivations? Like, why would somebody want to do this?
I mean, seniors have so much wisdom that they can um, basically teach many generations to come. Anytime I see patients at the Pearly, which is a long-term care home focused on veterans, I get many stories from my patients during the war days. And if you think about what life was like then compared to now, any problem I have is so minimal compared to what they had to face and what they went through. So I love to learn, and I think I can learn the most from someone who's been alive the longest. And to me, that's the seniors.
Very well
No,
put.
I agree. I agree with what you're saying.
Hmm.
Well put. Because that's one of the things our other physician friend has been advocating within the company. Because we just started, and then he's like, if you walk into any senior living home, or what do you call, retirement facility, he's like, the first thing you'll see is a lot of pictures and a lot of stories. So as a company, you need to address these lots of pictures and stories. So we, in fact, just started our little Facebook page, group. We had a page. We started a group. We did some research. We checked in with people. What's the best way to help them express those stories? So a lot of those wisdom that you mentioned, like for me, my grandmother died in childbirth, so I never got to meet my grandmother, right? And my father's father also died of a heart attack. So I've never seen both my grandparents, like my grandmother of my mother's side and my grandfather on my father's side. So when I meet people who have that different wisdom or stories, and especially given I'm a first generation Canadian, it's very interesting to learn about so many things which I wouldn't have known. And through I'm learning it through the company, through our events, through the guests, through the podcast. So it's I totally resonate why we do this. It's also about the way you see, like when we in a day, Paul and I were just talking before you came on the call. In a day, we work with people age 19 up to 90, right? Because our interns are in teens. And then a lot of the beneficiaries we work with are in their 80s, 90s, or some even like Paul's teacher is also 94, 95. So we work with across the generations, and we see the difference. We see the difference when you're dealing with this. And they have, like, for example, if I tell them, imagine a time without TV or radio, and they can't because they were not born. I can, because when I was born, we had TV, but computer came in when we were in school, right? So we've seen this millennial generation is, I guess, in between the bridge, which has seen a little bit without technology and a lot of with technology. So as we also plan strategically for any business, I think coming to the challenge and the vision, it's coming to that this generation is more hands-on. So when we make solutions, it's not like, okay, like you can have just an audio only drop-in file and you're done. No, you can't. It has to be consistent. It has to be coherent, and even if they don't advocate for themselves, they're very sharp and they're very smart. They know what they need, and they they know what they want. Like, like they literally have questions, and they're curious. They're more curious than the 19-year-olds we work with. So for me, right, Paul, and we were just discussing about this aspect that you're dealing with a customer base which is educated, which is aware, which has done the hard work, because they literally put us in a spot at times and they're like, okay, yeah, so tell me, what does this mean? What does this mean? So you can't just go in there and think you can do some cute technology gigs. You can't. Nothing is cute. It's very serious. They're going to ask you questions. And if you don't prepare, you're going to get it. And then they're viral too, right? They'll tell one will tell the other will tell the other. So it's not like they'll just leave probably a review which you can delete. No, no, no. It's actually in person. So you do well, you're going to get great word of mouth marketing. You don't do well, you're not going to get. They're going to get it the other way around. So I think in our experience, just going off what you said, they've seen different times and they're seeing different times. But I think, what do you think, Paul?
It is like that. It's like that. It's they're smart and curious. And so our company, I guess, is sometimes we say we're doing serious leisure. One way
Yeah.
to look at it. What advice would you have for a startup like ours?
I would say just keep doing what you're doing. I think there's a huge need for it, which is great. And, seniors are your best way to judge, whether what you're doing is working or not. And yeah, I think there should be more organizations like yours to try and, advocate for seniors and trying to get, I don't know if you've approached the government and told them what you're doing, but maybe get buy-in from them.
Sure. Thanks for the advice. We haven't, of course, not yet approached, because I think they're busy vaccinating everybody. So maybe when the timing is right, or maybe it's the right timing. I don't know. We have to give it a thought. So Neil, if people want to find more about Lanark lifestyles, how can they look you up?
You can check out our website, www.lanarklifestyles.ca, or they can send me an email at neel@lanarklifestyles.ca.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Neil, for
Thank you
coming on the
very much.
podcast.
Thank you
Thanks
very
for
much.
having me. It was a pleasure.